there, it's Sarah West at Little Minds at Work, and I want to take you through set 4 of the Instant Science of Writing digital teaching slides. Set 4 is where we really move into that genre-based writing. We'll go through narrative, which is set 4, opinion, persuasion, those really standard-based genre writing. The first 3 sets, we're getting students ready for that. We can't quite ask them to write a narrative story if they're not confident with labeling a picture, adding a string of words, and so now making that first initial shift into a genre-based writing. This also, you can tell by the outline, this is yellow, so this is going to align to my Unit 3 of Guided Phonics and Beyond. It aligns to the first 12 lessons of that unit, so we're going to be working with just some initial diagraphs. Now, let's say you need to use set 4 because according to your district pacing, you need to get narrative writing started. I think you'll see that this is a very phonics-based approach to teaching genre writing. I'm not going to be asking them to write these extensive paragraphs and narrative stories with all kinds of details in it. It's a very basic kind of approach to it. Now, you can adjust that, and of course, as a student is able to write more, you can ask that of them, but we want to just kind of keep it a nice little instructional level here. So if you are needing to use this ahead of time, you might need to do some adjusting on the phonics skills. For example, if it's too much to ask your students to work with diagraphs, you could just swap in a CVC word, but the writing instruction should be fine for you. My writing slides have embedded phonics and phonemic awareness. That's not really something that we're used to thinking about when it comes to writing, but it makes sense. We need phonemic awareness to apply those sounds in the words we're writing. And of course we need phonics because we need to know what letter we're writing for those sounds. So it makes complete sense that we pair phonemic awareness with phonics into our writing instruction. So what I've done in set 4, the narrative set of writing, is the first slide, well, this one's this is page 2 here, but the first initial slide after the little introduction slide is I'm going to take them through a phonemic awareness approach. Here we're just going to identify sounds and words, segment words, and then we go into substitution, and that's where I spend the bulk of this set in, is working with a substitution slide. So here they're just segmenting some CVC words with you. I start with CVC words knowing that this is initial set of set 4, and so you're just now getting into Unit 3 of Guided Phonics. I know that Unit 3 set 4, that's a little confusing. And the reason for that is the writing is 25 days per set, whereas in Guided Phonics, it's 50 days. So that's why you're always getting 2 sets of writing and 1 unit of Guided Phonics. Here you can see, I mentioned that substituting sounds, and this is the slide that's going to stay consistent throughout the rest of the set, working with substituting sounds and words. All of my Guided Phonics and Beyond Science of Writing sets include very good visual and narrative stories that the students can interact with you. Now, as a teacher, if you want to do your own model stories, that's a-okay. That's not a big deal at all. However, hustle and bustle of teaching, it's a lot on your plate. Thinking of a story on the fly, it's hard. So what I want to do is take that burden off of you. I've embedded all of the model stories for you. And then if you want to add on extra words, you can. If you want to flip to a blank screen on your page or on your whiteboard and write your own story, that's fine. Anchor chart, sure. But it's in here for you if you want to. In this unit, we do have a new call out for the students, so we're calling them narrators. And basically, we would narrate them. This is lesson 1 of this set, so we're just kind of narrating through a story. And then on day 1, I'm also going to do a class story with the students. So instead of sending them off to do their own story, anytime you see this little emblem and my writing slides, know that that's a class story. And then we're just going to bounce over into lesson 2. You can see right here, now narrators tell stories about what they like. So that's very common in narrative writing, where we're telling them what kind of stories you can write. And narrative is one of those hard ones to get kids to understand, because you want them to, like, okay, think about your life. You know, you write about yourself, and they're like, I'm not really sure. What is there to write about myself? When everything that they know is pretty much happening in their life, but sometimes hard to get them to make that connection. So we'll take it step by step for them. We can write about yourself. You can write about places you've been, people you know. So this is that little introduction slide, and it's basically going to recap, and it's by design. We want to constantly recap what we've learned, what is our goal, and then how we're going to get there. So I always do a couple of the top bullet points are recapping, Then I tell them the second to the bottom one is what we're going to do today. Today we will learn how narrators write about what they like. And then the bottom slide is basically telling them what we're doing right after this, which is segmenting sounds and words, and we went over that. This is that slide in each of the lessons where you're going to be using phonemic awareness. Here's where this is kind of the core lesson slide here. We're working with a new word string. And word strings was something I struggled with putting into the narrative unit because obviously I want to hand a student a sheet of paper. I want them to go back and they can write, Tim did shop with his mom and they went to the mall, but that doesn't always happen for all the students. Now, what I've realized as students is those that can independent write, they're gonna go and independent write. Even if I said, hey, let's go back and write about dogs today, they're probably gonna go back and write about cats because that's just where their passion is. They wanna write about what they wanna write about. So I'm not so worried about those students going back and still being able to fulfill their wantings of what they wanna write about. But there's that other bulk of students that go back, look at their blank sheet of paper and think, what am I writing about today? Word strings offer you a very quick reminder to them. If they're sitting there with that blank sheet of paper, just reminding them, you know, today we talked about what we'd like to do and we use that word string, I like to. You could try using that word string today. Now, thinking about sentence stems is something that I've always pulled away from in my program. And so you think like sentence stem, word string, it sounds like the same. But in my idea of a sentence stem is we all write it on the board. We all write those 3 words on our page. We all just add on a word at the end. And that's not what I want you to do. I don't want you to even have this to slate up for them when they go back to write. Now, if they recall and remember using that word string, that's okay. So here we're working on just kind of getting them to use words. I like to, and then what could they like to? You know, I like to kick, I like to nap, I like to fish. And here again is the slide where I'm gonna have that model story for you. And I just said, I want to share a story that a narrator wrote about what they like to do. Let's read the story together. I like to shop. And then here I draw attention to something new in this set. I said, wait, did you notice this paper? It has lines. So in previous sets, we started with an absolutely blank sheet. Then I added a solid line and they were adding their words or their letters below that solid line. Now we've transitioned to actual primary writing lines. Now I've always told teachers they can make adjustments on writing paper. Writing paper is the easiest thing for you to switch out. You have writing paper on hand. You want to switch it out, no problem. But in the program, I'm taking them to lines now. This has given them 75 days to practice without that restriction of the handwriting lines. So we have transitioned. This is the final slide in each set, and basically it's going to do that a little bit of a recap, like what do we do together? There's that we do. And then I have a partners do, so every day I do encourage you to have kids have writing partners, turning to someone. What are you writing about today? We need to talk about what we're going to write about that's going to help them go, when they go back to their table, they're going to be able to apply that a lot quicker. And then of course the you do is you actually sending them off to write. We talked about what they like. Now we're going to talk about what they can do. So what can narrators do? And I'm going to flip through that review slide. This is that phonemic awareness slide, kind of get to more of the lesson slides. And this one, we're just talking about things that they can do. And we're using that high frequency word can. So like I can hug, I can hop, I can dig. And then having, again, that mentor text, or that mentor writing there for you. Again, this is another one where you could even use this picture, write your own story. It's really here for you so you don't have to guess about a story that matches. One of the other struggles in this unit was getting students to work on that narrative base, but have the ability of the word sets that they know. So if you think about, tell me what you did this weekend. You're like, I went to my grandma's house, we walked down the hill to the shed, and then when we got there, I rode my bike. But I'm trying hard to make a phonics-based approach writing set. So for example, the word walked, it's not a word that's been covered yet in phonics. The word rode is not yet a word that's been covered in my phonics program. So can the students go back and phonemically spell that with their inventive spelling? Of course. But what I'm trying to do is guide them in a very, very kind of stricted way of the writing matching the phonics. And so that's what you're presenting to them. So I'm limited with the words that I can use in the program as well. So it makes it a little bit trickier, but that's my goal, to help you through that. Okay, I'll start clicking through these a little bit quicker. I just wanted to talk about a few of those big points on what makes this set so unique. So here, obviously, we talked about what they like, what they can do, and now what other kind of narrative stories can you do? You can also write about what you see. So, you know, like, I see the bus, I see the bed, I see the gum, I see Beth with mom. Narrators tell stories with sequence, so that's very common. Using that new high frequency word that's in Unit 3 of Guided Phonics and Beyond, then, so first, then. I see Beth shop, then Beth gets in the van. So again, keeping it in those phonics constraints of what this particular unit is working on. Narrators write, then illustrate. This is a big transition in the program, and I apologize for that. There we go. We're kind of doing a little celebration here. So in the program, we first went, the very first set was we're illustrating, you know, basically illustrators are writers, illustrators can tell stories. Then we went to adding some words under that line, and we started to encourage them, you know, like illustrating is a big part, but as the teacher, you're knowing like, I want words, then pictures. So we slowly have transitioned them to that point, and here's where we're making that full transition. Where as a teacher, you're going to ask them to go back and write first, then have a timer that goes off, some kind of system. So write, then color. And we express to them that, you know, some days you might not have this beautiful illustration because you spent your time writing your story. So it's taken a little bit of time to get them to this point, but it's time we make that transition. Our job at writing is actually to be a writer, not an illustrator. You know, we don't want to crush all their dreams, but as the teachers, we know that's the goal of that time. It is to write. So we're transitioning, we write first, then we illustrate. And here's kind of like a blank sheet. Narrators use mechanics. So of course, that's going to be those things that we've practiced so hard on: punctuation, capitalization, spacing, not only spacing between words, but also spacing between their letters. Narrators write about the past, so that's very common in narrative writing. And then I also generate a word list for you, again, keeping in this phonics pattern, so that could be any CVC word, it could be digraph words that we've practiced so far. So words like had, I had this at my grandma's. Met, I met my mom at the doctor. Got, I got a new dog. Dug, I dug a hole with dad. Ran, I ran to see my mom. Was, I was at the doctor's, then I went to the store, something similar to that. So again, giving them those words that they can phonemically spell, they have the skills to do so when they get back to their table. And yes, if they need to invent to spell the other words, that's a fine until they get more and more sounds available to them. They don't only write about the past, but narrators write about places that they've been to. So again, I give them a generated list here of some words, and then I use the prepositions because that's sometimes difficult for students too. On a bus, on a ship, on a dock, in a van, in a shed, at a bash, at a shop. If you're wondering about the word bash, it's in the program, so they learn quickly that it's a big party. And you can see that mentor's story is going to be there every day for them, along with that, I'm scrolling too fast, that built-in phonemic awareness. So here they are writing about people. So we talk about, you know, what people do you see? Like, what people are at your house? What people are at the school? What people do you see in your town? And using those names in their stories. Narrators tap to retell. Throughout all of the sets of my writing, I've been teaching them about the jobs of their pencil. Pencil is there to write words. Their pencil is there to make correct mistakes. And we also tip our pencil upside down and we tap with it to retell, and they've done this through several sets of the writing. So we tap with our pencil at each word to retell our story. It's very important that we are constantly encouraging them to go back and reread their story, not only in hopes of them discovering something that they want to add or fix, but they also just need to be cognizant of what they're writing. Are they able to read it? If they can't read their own story, it's going to be difficult for anyone else to read their story. Narrators use high frequency words. That's, again, something like I felt like I used to teach in writing, like, oh, you know, you have that list over there, use those words, but actually embedding it into your writing lesson. Yes, we have these words, at our disposal, let's use them. So just kind of reviewing some of the high frequency words within this particular unit of guided phonics and beyond. And you can see that my mentor stories are starting to get a bit longer. Now, whether or not your students are correlating that in their writing on that many lines, that may vary, but I want to start modeling it for them, that we're capable of writing multiple sentences. Narrators use the word said and speech bubbles. This is kind of a review. A lot of these lessons, you'll see we've taught these particular lessons before, but it's by design that we're spiraling back through them again. So yes, writers do use the word said, and speech bubbles just add even more to our mentor story. So I will get Pip a red dish at the shop. Is it this shop? Yes, this is it. You can see everything that I'm typing up here is going to match back to their phonics that they are capable of reading and writing. Narrators visualize their stories. That's something I feel like is very hard to get students to comprehend and do. So the more we can model it, the better. Close your eyes, really picture who was there, what did you hear, what did you smell, what did you see, and whether or not they can get all those details into their story, as long as we're getting them to understand that that's what a good writer would do. A good writer would get you all of those details, then hopefully they're going to start getting a little bit more of that into their story. And if it's not able to be in the written words because they're just not capable of it, hopefully they're adding those details into their illustration. Narrators persevere. That's something through all my work that I'm going to encourage students to continue persevering. So here's kind of where I wrap back around to the students and how they've come so far, that, you know, it's possible that you only get to write your story on your page and you don't get to finish your illustration, and that's okay too. There's my mentor text story for them to read through. Again, that's phonemic awareness is going to be built right in there for you. And this one, the narrators share, then they write. So again, getting partners to talk about their stories, ask questions, then they go back kind of inspired on what they're going to write. Narrators expand their stories. This is kind of a repeat lesson from the set before, but basically we're wanting them to understand that there's so much more that they can talk about their stories. So here I just say like, I will expand this story. I met Beth. Well, that's cool. Where did you meet Beth at? Okay, I met Beth at the shop. Okay, what did you do at the shop? I met Beth at the shop and I got chips and dip. So we now know who you were there with, where you were, and what you were doing. Again, getting all of that hopefully into their stories as well. Narrators have a problem and a solution in their story. Again, these story element types are kind of hard to get students to understand. They can read a story with you and probably identify a problem and solution, but adding a problem and solution into their own story, it's tough. It takes time. So I kind of shown that here with my model story. Tab is sad. What is it? Said Beth. I can pet you. So kind of Tab is sad. Is the story, is the problem. What was the solution? Beth decided to pet her. Narrators have characters and setting. So here, I was on the ship with Skip. Skip said, look at that rock. Narrators can zoom in, so a very common lesson in narrative writing is kind of having a small moment, zoom in moment, watermelon seed. There are a bunch of different names for that, but getting them to think exactly in on one moment. For example, the story I just read, what exactly happened with the rock part of the story. So kind of zooming in on that. Narrators use adjectives. This is really fun for me to add in because again, grammar, writing, it makes sense. They should go together, but they just sometimes get missed in the big hustle of writing. So listing out words, again, these are all phonics-based words that they can know from the C2C unit or this first half of Unit 3. Hot, red, thick, thin, big, bad, 6, 10, sad, mad, ill, rich, quick, lush. All of those words they can start to add into their stories. And of course, from there, we're going to talk about verbs. And again, I give them a lot of verbs that they can use directly in their stories. All of these words are phonemic to them. And then here, these last few units, I take them through the writing process. A little bit scary sometimes, mainly because kids, one, they don't ever think their story had anything wrong with it. So why am I going to polish this perfect story? Two, getting them to understand, like, we're taking the same story and working with it for 3 days. That's kind of hard for them, but it's a very important part of the writing, is to learn the writing process, the draft, the polish, and the publish. So that's it. Again, this was set 4 of the instant writing slides. They are Science of Writing aligned and aligned to the Guide to Phonics and Beyond curriculum. Thanks so much.